Have you ever wondered what would really happen if Jesus appeared before you at the moment when you were most fragile, most tired, most broken? I ask this question because, until recently, I also believed I understood the weight of prayer, the meaning of watching, what it truly means to ask for answers from heaven. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what I experienced that night. My name is Sarah, and what I am about to tell you is not a confusing dream. It is not a metaphor. It is not a simple emotional experience. It is a direct vision, a real intervention, a revelation about what awaits America. And it began when I was completely alone, kneeling in prayer. As I pray, you might recognize yourself in this feeling, the silence that becomes too heavy, the house that seems too empty, the soul that feels too restless. I had felt for days that something was approaching, something that no one could name, but that was already changing the atmosphere around us. The growing division, the invisible tension, the spiritual weight hanging over the country, all of this seemed to come together within me as I searched for answers. And it was there, in that moment, when my strength finally gave out, in that instant when I fell to my knees unable to hold back the tears, that everything began to change. The presence in the room, the change in the air, something, or rather someone, was coming. For many days before that early morning, something inside me seemed to want to warn me that the world around me was changing in a way I couldn't yet describe. It wasn't just physical exhaustion, or that common anxiety that sometimes appears for no clear reason. It was a deep spiritual restlessness, as if the air were heavier, and my soul was trying to alert me to something greater than I could comprehend. I spent sleepless nights, tossing and turning, feeling that something was approaching, something I couldn't name, but which filled every silence of the early morning with a kind of urgency I had never felt before. It was as if my heart sensed a revelation about to happen, even if my mind tried to deny it. The more I tried to rest, the more restless I became. The house was completely silent in the early hours of the morning, and this silence seemed to accentuate even more the feeling that something invisible was walking towards me. That particular night, the night that would change everything, the atmosphere was different from the moment I lay down. The silence wasn't empty. It was a silence that seemed to observe, that seemed to breathe. I felt a pressure in my chest, not of pain, but as if a gentle yet firm hand was calling me to be alert. I got out of bed and walked slowly through the house, trying to understand why I felt something was about to happen. The kitchen, the living room, the hallway, everything seemed the same, but at the same time totally different. The air seemed denser, more alive, as if it carried something spiritual that I couldn't yet interpret. I went back to the living room and stood there, looking at the shadows that the dim streetlights cast on the walls, and it was there that, unable to bear the weight I carried inside any longer, I knelt down. It wasn't a conscious decision. My body simply gave way. My knees touched the ground as if that were the only possible place for me to be at that moment. I felt my hands tremble as I brought them together, and before I knew it, my voice began to emerge, weak, broken, almost like a whisper trying to break through some spiritual barrier. It was a prayer unlike any I had ever prayed. It wasn't a memorized prayer. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't organized. It was a sincere, raw, vulnerable plea. I asked for answers. I asked for direction. I asked for peace for my heart, which seemed to have lost its breath. I asked for discernment to understand what was approaching, because that feeling of urgency insisted on accompanying me like a silent shadow. I said, almost without strength, "Lord, if there is something I need to see, something I need to know, then show it to me, because I can no longer bear this feeling that something is coming, and I don't know what it is." And it was precisely there, in that simple, desperate plea, that the atmosphere around me began to change. First, it was the air. It felt different, as if the temperature had dropped and risen simultaneously. A spiritual chill and a physical warmth mingled, creating a sensation I could never describe with human words. The light around me seemed to tremble. It didn't flicker. It didn't fail. It trembled, as if reacting to the presence of someone arriving. My arms began to tingle, not from fear, but from recognition. It's like when someone very important enters a room, and the whole atmosphere changes even before you see that person. And it was then that I realized I was no longer alone. My eyes filled with tears, before I even understood why. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't fear. It was something that pierced my body and went straight to my soul. The air became so thick, it felt like I was breathing presence, not oxygen. My body began to tremble uncontrollably. A wave of heat swept through my chest, as if something sacred was approaching, and I was merely a fragile vessel trying to withstand it. The silence around me ceased to be just silence. Suddenly it was alive. Nothing made a sound, but it seemed like everything was speaking, and even before seeing him, I felt him. It was a firm, strong, intense presence, but at the same time so full of compassion that the mere fact of feeling, it made my heart race in a way I had never felt before. I didn't see anything yet, but I knew. I knew exactly who was there. I knew that the atmosphere could only react like that to a single presence, the presence of Jesus. It wasn't an emotional intuition. It was a spiritual certainty. My body knew before my mind. And then, without bright lights, without thunder, without theatrics, he appeared. There, before me, real, close, alive. He didn't seem like a distant image, nor a symbolic vision. He was simply there, like someone entering a room and standing before you, looking into your eyes. The impact of that vision made my whole body tremble. There was no doubt, no questioning, no room to think about whether it was real or not. It was too real to be questioned. He had a gaze that pierced everything, my past, my present, what I hid, what I feared. It was a gaze of absolute authority, but with such profound tenderness that my heart almost collapsed in my chest. I felt that he saw everything I had been and everything I would still be, and that gaze said, without words, I know. When he finally spoke, it wasn't many words, but their weight was so intense that it seemed each syllable crossed the line between this world and the spiritual. He called my name, and when Jesus calls your name, it's not just the sound that reaches you. It's as if the entire universe recognizes that call. It was at that moment that I understood he hadn't come just to comfort me. He had come to show me something serious, something that was about to happen, something that would change everything I believed about the future. I felt my reality literally begin to transform around us. The floor, the walls, the room, everything seemed to slowly dissolve, as if ceasing to be the primary reality. It was as if a veil was being pulled away, revealing another dimension, another scene. I was being carried, led into the vision he wanted to show me. It wasn't like entering a dream. It was like entering another reality as real as the physical one, but infinitely deeper. Suddenly, I was facing something gigantic. I saw America, but not the America we know. It was as if I were seeing several layers of the nation at once. The present, the future, and something else. Something spiritual, something hidden, something about to emerge. I saw enormous cities, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, but they weren't as they should be. There was a tension in the air of these cities, a heavy, almost suffocating atmosphere. The streets were silent, but it wasn't an ordinary silence. It was a silence heavy with fear, with expectation, with something approaching. People walked quickly, looking around, as if they sensed an invisible danger that didn't yet have a name. The sky was a color I had never seen before. It wasn't blue, it wasn't gray, it wasn't purple. It was a metallic mixture, a strange glow that seemed to reflect something spiritual happening over the nation. And as I watched, signs began to appear in the sky. They weren't stars, or airplanes, or common natural phenomena. They were signs. They were lights that moved in a way that gave me immediate certainty that this was not physical, but spiritual, as if the sky were trying to draw the attention of the entire country to something that many insisted on ignoring. The wind also seemed to carry messages. It would change direction suddenly, as if blowing on purpose, as if bringing a warning. Sometimes, in the midst of this wind, I would hear something like a distant sound, not exactly a human sound, not exactly a natural sound, but something that sounded like trumpets in the distance, trumpets that did not belong to this world. I knew it, deep inside, in every part of my being. I knew. This was the beginning of the spiritual chaos that was approaching. And then Jesus showed me what was really coming, the main event, the thing that nobody wanted to admit, but that was moving toward the nation like an inevitable wave. I saw internal division increasing. I saw conflicts exploding not only in the streets, but within families, within communities, within people's souls. He showed me that the root of all this was not political. It wasn't economic. It was spiritual. It was a deep crisis, a disconnection, a spiritual blindness that had been building up over decades. And then, he spoke a phrase that I will never forget, a prophetic phrase that carried the weight of what was to come, a phrase that seemed to transcend time and space. This is closer than you think. Gradually, as I remained there on my knees, I realized that the air around me began to change in such a profound way that no human word can truly describe it. It was as if the atmosphere itself was breathing, as if something invisible, yet utterly real, had just entered the room. The silence of the house remained, but it was no longer the same silence. Now there was a living silence, a silence that seemed to have weight, a silence that enveloped me inside and out. The light in the room also changed. It didn't become stronger or weaker. It became different, denser, softer, and at the same time more intense, as if it had a consciousness of its own. My body reacted before I could understand. A gentle tremor ran through my hands, then my arms, and finally reached my chest. My heart raced, not like someone in fear, but like someone recognizing something familiar and yet utterly supernatural. I felt a warmth rise from the base of my spine to my neck, a warmth that felt both spiritual and physical, as if a presence were so close it touched every layer of my being. I still couldn't see anything, but I knew something, someone, was there, and it wasn't human. It wasn't imaginary. It wasn't emotional. It was a real, concrete presence, indescribably powerful, and at the same time, full of mercy. And then I felt the approach, as if an invisible step had been taken within my own spirit. A shiver ran down my spine, but it wasn't cold. It was as if my soul was being reminded of something I had always known but had forgotten. The air grew heavier, as if carrying glory. My body weakened for a moment. My hands fell to the ground, and the only thing I could manage to say was an almost voiceless, "Lord," because I knew exactly who was coming, even before my eyes saw anything. And when the light finally shifted once more, not as a bright flash, but as an outline forming within the very air, I understood that he was revealing himself. The presence became so intense that my eyes filled with tears, even before I could see any definite form. And then he appeared, not as a distant vision, not as an intangible figure, not as something symbolic. He was there, close before me, so real that my breath caught in my throat for a moment. His presence carried absolute authority, but his gaze had something that broke my heart. It was as if he were seeing everything inside me, every fear, every question, every weakness, every sincere search. And at the same time, it was as if he were seeing everything about the country itself, the pain, the fall, the division, the approaching darkness. When he looked at me, I understood immediately that he had not come merely to comfort. There was something serious in his gaze, something profound, something that demanded I be prepared to hear it. My whole body trembled, not from fear, but from the certainty that a revelation was about to begin. And when he finally opened his mouth, his first sentence pierced my spirit as if it had been spoken across time, across eternity, across everything that exists. And it was precisely that phrase, that short, firm, and prophetic phrase, that sparked the vision that would change everything I believed about what is about to happen in America. When I finally understood the weight of what Jesus was showing me, something inside me seemed to break and rebuild itself at the same time. It was as if my spirit was being pulled to a deeper, more conscious, more alert place. I felt fear, not ordinary fear, but the kind that awakens, that shakes, that forces you to recognize that you are facing something much greater than any human understanding. My body trembled, my hands were cold, but at the same time a courage that I didn't recognize as my own began to emerge from within, as if it were being placed there by him. I realized, almost like a whisper, from within, that none of this was about me. It wasn't about my strength, my preparation, or my spirituality. It was about the calling, about the responsibility that came with the revelation. I saw myself as small before the grandeur of it all, but I also understood that Jesus wouldn't appear to someone just to cause astonishment. He appears to guide, warn, awaken, summon, And when this perception took shape within me, a kind of spiritual gravity settled in my chest. I knew I would have to carry that message, and that it would change everything in my life. I felt torn between the weight and the purpose. Part of me wanted to cry, retreat, pretend I hadn't seen what I saw. Another part, deeper, firmer, more aligned with him, knew there was no going back. When he shows something, it's because someone needs to speak. When he reveals, it's because people need to hear. And when he chooses, it's not because the person is ready. It's because he will sustain whatever is necessary. This mixture of emotions continued to wash over me like waves. Chills, peace, trembling, clarity, all together, all intense. And I felt that this moment wasn't just about understanding the vision, but about understanding who I would become from then on. It was as if he had placed before me not only the revelation, but also the mission. And it was in that state, between shock, courage, and the calling, that I realized the vision was slowly beginning to fade. The transition wasn't abrupt. There wasn't a sudden cut or a final flash. It was as if someone was dimming the intensity of a spiritual world until the physical one began to reappear. The images that were once so vivid and so real began to lose their brilliance, as if dissolving into thin air, and the presence that filled everything around me began to recede with the same gentleness with which it had arrived. I still tried to keep my eyes fixed, my mind alert, as if afraid of missing any detail, but my vision was being withdrawn. The first thing I felt was my body becoming heavy again. My legs seemed to disobey me. My hands were sweaty. My heart was racing. A tear rolled down my cheek, then another, and suddenly I realized my face was completely wet, as if I had been crying for long minutes without realizing it. My knees ached, my breath was short, and a strange weakness ran through my arms, as if I had returned from a place too distant for my body to immediately understand. When I finally opened my eyes fully, my house was the same, exactly the same. The clock on the wall showed the same silent dawn. The soft light from the kitchen filtered through in the same way. The furniture was where it always had been, but nothing seemed the same. The environment had lost its neutrality. It was as if the physical world had become too small after what I saw. Everything seemed ordinary on the outside, but laden with meaning on the inside. It was at that moment that absolute certainty fell upon me like a weight. It hadn't been imagination. It hadn't been a dream. It hadn't been emotion. Nothing could convince me otherwise. What I had seen was real. What he showed me was real. What is coming is real. And while I was still trying to breathe more calmly, a deep conviction began to form within me. I knew the time had come to tell, to speak, to bear witness, no matter the fear, no matter the reaction of people, no matter the cost. Someone needed to hear, and that early morning marked the exact moment when my life was divided into before and after the vision. Get ready. I'm now moving on to Topic 8, Prophetic Closing plus Hook for the next video, maintaining the connection, and without definitively closing the subject. Even as I tried to process everything, one phrase kept repeating in my mind, as if it were still echoing from his voice. This is closer than you think. Every time I remembered, my heart raced again, because now I understood that the vision wasn't just for me. It was for everyone who still feels, deep in their soul, that something spiritual is drawing near to the nation. And as I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself, I realized I needed to guide those who listened to me. I needed to prepare, warn, awaken, exactly as he had awakened me, not to generate fear, but to generate vigilance, discernment, awareness of the time we are living in. And however heavy the warning was, there was also a thread of hope, because he does not reveal to destroy, he reveals to prepare. And before I continue with the rest of what I need to tell you, because yes, there is more, I want to say something brief, but powerful. Lord Jesus, I pray now for every person listening to this account. May their spiritual eyes be enlightened. May any confusion fall away. May his peace envelop their minds. May every heart receive discernment, strength, and clarity. May no one walk blindly in the times we are living in. May he awaken, strengthen, and prepare each one. In the name of Jesus, amen. If this message resonated with you, leave a comment with a phrase that identifies someone who is aware of the times we live in. I am awake, and if you haven't signed up yet, do it now, because there are even stronger and more direct revelations coming in the next video, and you can't miss it.